everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm back with 4 all new Easter decor DIYs. All of the projects today are super easy to do with a high-end look. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you do, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Now let's get started. For the first DIY today, I'm making a fabric stuffed bunny, and the first thing that I did was I went to Google and I just typed in bunny silhouette. This is one of them that came up, and then I printed it out. Once it was printed, I then used my scissors to cut the silhouette out. The fabric that I'm going to be using for my bunnies is this really pretty blue fabric with flowers on it. I did just recently pick this up from Hobby Lobby, and as you can see, I did double it up so that there was 2 layers of the fabric. That way I can get 2 bunnies out of one cut. I then placed my bunny on top of my fabric, and then I traced all around it so that I am able to see the lines where I need to cut out the bunny on my fabric. You could always use like sewing pins to hold both of those pieces of fabric together, but I just cut it out very carefully and made sure to hold them so that my bunnies were exactly the same when I cut them out. Now that I have both of the bunnies cut out of the fabric, I'm then going to be gluing them together. Obviously, I want to put glue on the inside where it's the faded color of the fabric, and then the very vibrant color of the fabric is going to be on the outside. So I just took my hot glue gun and I ran the hot glue around the very edges of the bunny, and I did work in small sections when doing this just so that I could make sure that everything was in line and I didn't accidentally glue something together that didn't need to be glued together. I always like working in sections when hot gluing fabric. So I just continued to hot glue all of my bunny fabric together, but I did not glue the very bottom by the bunny's feet together because I'm going to need this to be open for when I add my polyfill. Next, I'm going to be adding my polyfill to the inside of my bunny. You can get polyfill at any craft store, and even places like Walmart sell it. I took small pieces of the polyfill and pressed it up into the bunny with my fingers, and then I did end up using a small dowel rod to really press that polyfill up into the ears of the bunny. And then I just continued putting the polyfill into the bunny until it was stuffed pretty well, and then the very bottom of my bunny, I just used some hot glue to glue the bottom together. Then I wanted to add some detail around my bunny, so I did use a piece of polka dot ribbon from Hobby Lobby, and then I'm adding a piece of jute right in the center of that ribbon to add even more detail. You'll see here that my ribbon already is cut into a V shape on the ends. That's because I originally had already attached this ribbon and then decided I wanted to add the jute, so I'd already done that previously. But I just wrapped those 2 pieces around the bunny's neck and had them overlapping on the very front. Once I had it all glued together, I did end up wanting to use some buttons. The buttons I'm using are from Dollar Tree, and I'm using like a little bit larger of a brown one, and then I'm using a really small gray one, and I glued the small gray one onto the brown one, and then I just hot glued those right in the center of that ribbon where they overlap on the front of my bunny. For this project, I'm also adding this Happy Easter unfinished wood icon that is from Hobby Lobby, and I painted it with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory. And then for the last step in this project, I'm hot gluing that wood icon right underneath the buttons on my bunny. And this is what my fabric stuffed bunny looks like all finished. I ended up doing a second bunny as well with a little bit of a different silhouette, but it's basically the same steps as I did with the first bunny, and I think they look so cute together. Now moving into the second DIY today. For this one, I'm going to be using an entire pack of wood shims that I picked up from Lowe's. There are 8 of them in a pack, and as you'll see here, these wood shims are tapered, so they're a little bit larger on one side, and then they taper down a little bit thinner all the way down to the second side. The first thing I'm doing to these wood shims is I'm painting all of them with my Waverly paint in the color Pumpkin, and I only did one coat of this paint on all of my shims, and I did do the front and the back side of them. Once they were all dry, I then took some of my Java colored paint from Folk Art and I just dry brushed that color around all of the edges of all of my wood shims. I'm then attaching all of my shims together using hot glue. I would put the glue going all the way down one of the shims and then just press another one on top to attach them. And I did glue them together where all of the larger sides are glued together and all of the smaller tapered sides are glued together. So it would be kind of like in the shape of a carrot. Next, I'm going to be using some of this green raffia from Dollar Tree, and I did leave the little tie that was in the middle holding the raffia together. I thought it would make it a little bit easier for me when I glue it onto the top of my shims. I did cut the top of the raffia down quite a bit so that it would be a little bit shorter, and then with my scissors, I did not want to have just like one big blunt cut on the top of the raffia, so I did take my scissors and just kind of cut randomly so that it looked a little bit more choppy and more realistic. Then to glue it on, I just put hot glue right on the top of my wood shims and then attached the raffia to that. I'm also adding some of these greenery pieces that I had in my stash, and I'm just ripping them apart basically so that they are individual and a little bit easier for me to add on. I like doing it this way. That way I can place each little stem exactly where I want. And I'm just using hot glue to attach those right in front of that green raffia. And then to add even more detail, I'm adding a little bit of Spanish moss from Dollar Tree right around all of the greenery pieces. For this project, I'm also adding one of these Happy Easter wooden icons from Hobby Lobby, and I'm painting that with my Waverly paint in the color Ivory. I'm adding this green and cream color ribbon. I thought this color goes perfect with today's project. I tied it into a really simple shoelace bow, and then I'm adding that at the very top of my wood carrot, and then right underneath that bow I'm adding that Happy Easter icon. And this is what my wood shim carrot looks like all finished. A really easy and inexpensive project that's perfect for tabletop decor this Easter. Now moving right on into DIY number 3. For this one, I'm using this square wooden wall piece from Michaels. This is from the Art Minds brand. And the first thing I did was just peeled off the tag that was on the back of this piece. And then I used my Folk Art wood tint in the color Walnut. I painted the tint on around all of the front edges first, and then I wiped away the excess tint with an old towel. And then I moved on to the sides of the piece, and then I also did the back as well so that the whole entire piece will look finished, even though I'm not really going to be doing anything to the back. Then for the entire inside of this piece, I'm painting it with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory, and I just had to do one quick coat of this paint. For this project, I'm using 8 of these unfinished wood carrot icons from Hobby Lobby. I'm painting the bottom carrot portion of these with my Waverly paint in the color Pumpkin. And then for the top of all of my carrots, I'm using the Folk Art chalk paint in the color Spanish Moss. After all the paint had dried, I'm then placing all of my carrots inside of my wood sign. I wanted to get them all spaced out the way I wanted them to be before I started gluing all of them down. And then to glue them down, I'm just using hot glue on the back side of each carrot and then just pressing it down back into place. Then to add just a little bit of color, I'm using some of this green and cream ribbon from Hobby Lobby, tying it into a really simple bow, and then I'm adding that bow at the top left-hand corner of my sign. This is what it looks like all finished. This project only took me a few minutes to create, and I think it looks so cute for tabletop decor this Easter. Now for the fourth and final DIY today. For this one, I'm using this unfinished wooden carrot from Dollar Tree. And the first thing that I'm doing to this is painting the bottom carrot portion of this piece with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Pumpkin. And I only had to do one coat of paint for this. Then for the top portion where it sticks out a little bit, I'm painting this with my Folk Art chalk paint in the color Spanish Moss. And then for the outside of the stem, I'm using Folk Art chalk paint in the color Sage Shadow. And the color Sage Shadow is a little bit thinner than the other paint, so I did have to do 2 coats of that paint. Then I'm using these unfinished wooden letters to spell out the word Easter. These ones are from Hobby Lobby, and I'm painting all of my letters with the Waverly paint in the color Ivory. Next, I'm taking all of my letters and just spelling out the word Easter, going all the way down my carrot, just making sure they're all centered before I start gluing them down. And I did use hot glue on the back side of each one of my letters to attach them. After I had all of my letters attached, then I wanted to add a little bit of detail around the outside of my carrot. So I'm using some of this white cotton cord from Hobby Lobby, and I just hot glued that going around all of the outside edges, but I only did around the outside edges of the bottom of the carrot. I did not do around the stem of the carrot. Then once I got all the way back around, I just clipped the cotton cord off, and then I hot glued the end of that down so that it wouldn't fray out. And then I wanted to add even more detail. As you guys know, I love adding detail to a lot of my projects. So for this, I just took some regular jute and just hot glued that around all of the outside edges of my carrot, right on the outside of where I just added that white cotton cord. Then I'm going to be adding that jute around the inside of that white cotton cord, but I noticed that my E was a little bit crooked, so I peeled that off, and before I hot glued that back on, I just went ahead and added the jute around all of the inside of that white cotton cord. And then once I had that attached, I had to glue my E back on. I did break my E when I was trying to get it off, but once I had it all glued on, you couldn't even tell. Next, I'm going to be making a double bow, and for this one, I'm using this green and orange checked ribbon, both from Hobby Lobby, and I took the pieces of ribbon and I wrapped them around my index and my middle finger twice. Then I took the 2 end pieces and then I poked them through the opening that's at the very bottom of like where my hand and my 2 fingers meet. I then took those 2 pieces of ribbon and then I brought them up and over in between my 2 fingers, and then that little loop that's down at the bottom, I put both of those ends of the ribbon through there and then just pulled them up and super tight. I hope I explained that well. I tried to explain that in another video, and it's super hard to explain how to do bows, so I hope that explained everything okay for if you don't know how to do a double bow. Next, I'm adding some Spanish moss to the very top of my carrot where the carrot meets the stem. I used hot glue to attach that, and then I'm also adding some of this green raffia from Dollar Tree. I just took some leftover pieces that I had from a previous project, and then I cut the pieces down pretty short, and then I'm just hot gluing those at the very top of where I just added the Spanish moss, and I added that going all the way across the top of my stem. Then I'm adding some hot glue to attach my double bow at the very top left-hand side of my carrot. And then for the very last step, I'm adding some jute through the top holes of the carrot to create my hanger. This is what my project looks like all finished. I love the rustic look of this one, and it goes perfect in my home this year with all of my Easter decor. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing. Please be sure to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below which project is your favorite from today's video. Thank you so much for watching.